Hey guys, welcome back to Mo's Game Table. Today we're going to take a look inside Korea, The Forgotten War. This is a game designed by Rod Miller and is published by Multiman Publishing. This is another in the long-running and very popular OCS series from MMP. I've already covered Reluctant Enemies on the channel in the past. That is a game that I ended up deciding to sell because the subject matter, the British going after Vichy Syria, that one just didn't grab me. So I sold it instead of trying to keep it and learn how to play OCS, which I should have, because it had a lot of support material and I regret getting rid of it for that reason. But Korea is more compelling to me, that's more interesting to me, so I figured I would get this when MMP had their sale and give it a shot because the price was fantastic and the subject matter is more along the lines of something I'm interested in, and I will be able to get a better gauge as to whether or not I will like the OCS system. So let's take a look at the back of the box and see what this game's all about. The Korean War stands as a key event in world history. It was the first shooting confrontation of the Cold War, and it was the first limited war of the nuclear age. It remains the only time since the Second World War that two of the world's major military powers, in this case the United States and China, openly fought one another with diplomatic miscalculation and ineptitude on both sides, leading to fierce combat. The Korean War was also the United Nations' first opportunity to play a leading role in world military events. Korea, The Forgotten War covers the first year of fighting and highlights the mobile phase of the war using the award-winning Operational Combat Series rules. The full flavor of the mobile campaigns is brought to light, as are the political influences and constraints on the parties. Scenarios are included for players wanting to explore specific operations. They can also be used as training exercises before taking on one of the long campaign games. Options include variations on the Red Chinese entry into the war, nuclear weapons, and full Soviet support, in addition to a number of more minor variations. 13 scenarios, of which 2 use 2 maps and 5 use only 1 map. And this is a reprint of the 2003 game. The component list, we get 3 full-color 22 by 34-inch map sheets, 4 counter sheets, a series rulebook, the game-specific rulebook, charts and tables book, and 2 charts and tables along with 2 dice. It is rated complexity high. Solitaire suitability is also rated as high. Got an example of the maps down here, an example of one of the maps, as well as the counters on the back. So let's take a look inside and see what we get. All right, we got our 2d6, the component list, as well as how to contact MMP customer support, series rules version 4.1a, the game-specific rules, the player aids, counter sheets, and our maps. So let's set up the maps and take a closer look at the game. Now we'll take a look at the maps that come with the game. We're going to look at them individually. There are maps A, B, and C. This is map A. It starts the furthest north from China into North Korea. You see the national boundary, the Yalu River. On the left-hand side here, we've got the victory point track, the rebuild chart, weather table, variable replacements, supply table, and then the interception and dead piles for North Korea. Terrain key is also at the bottom right. Then on map B, we have the southernmost portion of North Korea. We have Pyongyang here. Then we have the national border between North and South, and then we get into the northern portion of South Korea, where we start off with Seoul. And then we finish off the southern portion of South Korea on map C. We've got multiple boxes for Pusan A and B, ground units, Air Base 1, Air Base 2, Air Base 3 for the Japan holding box. We've got the dead pile over here. Then we've got the half-week record track, weather table, then the year from 1950 to 1951, victory point for the United Nations forces, ship and rail chart, variable replacements, rebuild chart, amphibious landing table, and the CVG holding box, as well as other holding boxes for the United Nations, C box, communist supply interdiction, and then the terrain key on the bottom left corner. Next, we'll take a look at the player aid cards that come with the game. We have the terrain effects chart at the top, which lists out all the different types of terrain, the combat line, movement costs for track, truck, or leg, and then any special modifiers on the right-hand side. Below that, we have the communist supply table, communist replacement table, United Nations replacement table, weather table, and the UN shipping and rail box. On the back, we have a listing of abbreviations, the rebuild chart, and the amphibious landing table at the bottom. The next player aid is actually a fold-out. This is your charts and tables. On the front, we have the outline sequence of play, transportation equivalents, air base capture table, air transport success table, and the air combat table, as well as some more information for air transport and airdrop. And on the inside, we have the flak table, barrage supply, barrage versus facility table, surprise modifier, combat supply, the combat table, and we finish out with the combat sequence summary. And on the back, we close out the charts and tables with the attrition table, dump blowing table, capture table, rail transport shipping supply summary, supply level effects, fuel supply, trace supply, miscellaneous, and the anti-tank effects. And we'll take a look at the counter sheets that come with the game. On the first sheet, we have U.S. Army forces, Marine forces, and then a mix of United Nations units. At the top right, we have the light green South Korean units. Below that, we have some administrative counters. And then the final two lines here are for the Blitzkrieg Legend replacement counters. On the next sheet, we have North Korean ground and air forces, the Chinese ground forces, and the air units, as well as Soviet air units above those. And on the final two counter sheets, we have the administrative counters for use throughout the game. Next, we'll take a look at the series rules. We are up to version 4.1a, so when you get your copy of your game, go and check on the website and see what they're up to, because you may have gotten an older game. It might be up to, let's say, version 4.3, 4.4, whatever, and you can download the latest rules. This is a 48-page black and white rulebook. On the front cover, we have the table of contents listing out all the pages and the general areas of the rules that you'll be looking at. Start off with the introduction, version 4.1 rules, the game components. On the inside, we have the basic combat unit broken down for you so you can understand those, as well as the OCS standard markers. And we have the sequence of play starting on page 3, and it'll break it down for you so you can understand all the steps in the sequence of play. Narrative sequence of play there, simulcast turns, units and markers, ground units, combat units, non-combat units, ships and aircraft. General concepts of the game like rounding, fractions, cumulative effects, attack capable units, ZOCs, regimental equivalents, stacking, transportation equivalents. Then at top we have an example of movement in and through zones of control. Fog of war, modes, general mode restrictions, voluntary versus involuntary, mode changes. And then at the top we have an example of units and their modes. Combat mode, move mode, reserve mode, strat mode, exploitation mode, and then the old DG, disorganized mode. Then we have ground movement, how to move ground units, an example of laying a carpet at the top, terrain effects, restrictions on movement, reaction phase, overrun restrictions. Then we get into ground combat. Sequence summary, and then we have the terrain and combat table. We have an example of comprehensive combat at the top of page 14. Supply and combat, action rating modifier, surprise, odds determination, combat resolution, and retreat step loss option. And we have step losses, retreats and advances, exploit results, specialized combats, barrage, exploitation, supply points, transportation of supply, on-map supply, and combat supply, fuel supply as well. Supply is big in this game. That's what it's all about. Trace supply, extenders, then we have attrition and out of supply, and several examples as you can see throughout the book. Specialty supply levels, internal stocks, and then we get to destroying dumps and specialized units. Headquarters, transport points, railroads, artillery units, replacement units, reinforcements, formation markers, engineer functions, air power, aircraft and basic handling, aircraft movement, air combat, flak, fighter sweeps, interceptions, barrage and hip shoots, train busting, air transport, airdrop, base transfer, air bases, refitting aircraft, airstrips, building air bases, reduction of air bases, air base cards, which are optional, hedgehogs, weather, naval power, landing craft, amphibious landings, beach assaults, ports and shipping, breakdowns, and then we get to the optional rules on page 38. So 38 pages of base rules, and then you get into some optional rules. Once you get a feel for this, you can add in some other things here to change things up. Recon, proportional strength, independence, rebasing limits, convention tempo, revise rebuilds, attacking empties, reactive artillery, enhanced construction, enhanced transport, terms and definition then on page 40, which will give you all of the definitions for the terms that you'll be reading throughout the book, so that way you're not confused, because there's going to be a lot of shorthand in the book. Designer's notes here on page 42. And we have some player's notes. Then we get to the index, which you're going to need on a rule book of this size, and that will finish out the back of the rule book. Next, we'll take a look at the game-specific rules. This is a 48-page black and white book. On the front there, it says version 2.0, just like I said before. With the series rules, just check and see if they've got a later version on the website. Start off with the introduction, general rules, and weather. Again, these are going to be game-specific rules, so they're either going to supersede or change some of the base rules. Engineer capabilities, counter colors and ownership, victory, ending in 1950, air base and port reduction, 2-map games, replacements and transport, Pusan perimeter zone, and then we get into the communist-specific rules. And then we have the UN special rules. And then we get to options and variants. Intervention option, no sanctuary, North Korean armor rebuild, U.S. Navy, UN dedicated air support, and even nuclear weapons. Full Soviet support, U.S. is prepared, air war that could have been, and sweep the streets. Then we also have an optional victory point procedure and the 105th Division, as well as enhanced transport, take the high ground, and adding limited flight. Then we have the abbreviations to finish that out, and then we go to the scenarios on page 9, and that's going to give you a breakdown of how you'll set up your scenarios. And it's MMP, so we're going to have basically just text information for all of the scenarios. It gives you just the units and their locations that you'll be setting them up in. So really no images to look at. We'll just kind of flip through it so you can see the different scenarios. We got the Chosen Reservoir, Enter the Dragon. I guess Bruce Lee's going to make an appearance. No, that's when the Chinese join in. Then we have the Chinese intervention, Ridgeway duels for Korea, CCF fourth phase offensive, Operation Ripper, Chinese spring offensives, then the Communist campaign arrival schedule. This is used for specific campaign numbers at the top. Then we have the UN campaign arrival schedule, same as with the Communist player. Then we have developers notes. That goes on for about a page. Then we have designer's notes. Then some further reading, the amphibious landing table. And then on the back, we finish with the terrain effects chart, the Communist supply table, US shipping and rail, weather table, UN replacements, and the Communist replacements table. All of these you'll find in the charts and tables foldout. And that is a look at everything you get inside of Korea, the Forgotten War. This is a game designed by Rod Miller and published by Multiman Publishing. Well, OCS has been around quite a while, and it is a very popular system. And like I said before, I got Reluctant Enemies, but I decided to sell it because it was not really of interest to me, that area. But Korea is. And when MMP had that sale, you couldn't pass it up. I think it was like $25 for the game. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to give this a shot because I'm more interested in Korea than I was with Syria. But I do regret not having the information that was in that, the primers and things like that, that really everybody said is really helpful in getting you into the series. So maybe I can find that online. I don't know if they have those as downloads or not, but it would be great to see if they did, because that's always good to have supplemental reading material and information when learning a new system. And OCS is a pretty popular and big system, so I'm sure I can find other people online that play that will assist me in learning when I get to sit down and play this. But I'm curious to check out OCS and see what all the hullabaloo is about, because I know it's very popular, like I said, and I'm more into the fighting than I am the supply portion of things, so I'm curious to see what my reaction will be when you have to worry about supply to get into fighting. I'm just like, hey, don't worry about supply. You get me the beans, bullets, and band-aids. I just want to get in there and start swinging. That's just the way I like to play. But this will give me another chance to check things out from the operational side of things and logistics all mixed together as one. Well, I hope that helps you guys out if you've been curious about this one. If you have any comments or questions, post them down below. Thanks for tuning in, guys. See you next time.